Memorial Hospital Nutrition Series, protein. So are you a protein lover or hater? I don't know, it seems like people gravitate one direction or the other. But you have to remember protein is part of virtually all body parts and functions. And there is complete animal or incomplete, but there are some complete plant sources too. So now there are even plant-based meats. But, you know, this gives me flashbacks to the 90s. Should plants really be marketed as meat? It almost feels like the whole fat-free craze. So I think we have to proceed with caution there. And here are animal proteins. So a single portion will range from a quarter cup to an ounce cooked. However, bone broth is a cup. And these will also vary in the amount of fat and sodium. And plant also can be complete, but usually incomplete. Plant will have fiber, carbs, so you have to remember that. Or often you might think of vegetarians, it's not absolutely required in a meal, but certainly it makes your food more interesting to combine a couple categories to make a complete protein. And then powders are another group that encompass both animal and plant. And there are naked versions where there's nothing added versus ingredient blends infusions where some sweeteners and flavorings. So they vary in how they're extracted and processed, and then also in the types. So for animal protein, it could be whey, casein, egg, collagen. And for plant proteins, it could be pea, hemp, soy, rice, artichoke. And often the plant proteins contain more than one type to make them a complete protein. Some foods are very straightforward in terms of portions. Quarter cup of shredded cheese is a protein portion. Quarter cup of cooked meat, which typically equals an ounce. 1 egg, 1 cup bone broth. But there are other foods, such as yogurt, that aren't quite as clear because it depends if it's regular or Greek yogurt. So this is a flavored Greek yogurt. The serving size is 3/4 of a cup. So now we want to figure out how many protein portions are actually in this serving size. Just remember that right around 7 grams equals 1 portion of protein. So this contains 16 grams, and that would equal 2 portions. So the equivalent of 1/2 cup of cooked meat or 2 eggs. On the left is the label for an egg, a large egg. 6 grams of protein, so that is right around 1 portion. Whereas on the right, the egg beaters, basically egg whites, 3 tablespoons has 5 grams of protein. So you would need 4 tablespoons to get closer to that 7-gram cutoff. And here with cottage cheese, 1/2 cup equals 13 grams of protein. So again, that would be about 2 portions. So here's an example of 2 ready-to-eat fish options. On the left, you have the tuna infusion, which basically there's oil and some spices mixed in. The serving size is a cup for 21 grams of protein. So obviously that doesn't hold true to the quarter cup, but they do have oil and some other things added. On the right, you have salmon, 14 grams of protein in this pouch, so that would equal 2 portions. And this is an example of how sodium can vary. So here, 4 ounces of raw turkey, that would equal 3 ounces cooked, has 85 milligrams of sodium, and there will always be some sodium in meat. When you look to the right, the same portion size for raw, 750 milligrams of sodium. If you need to watch sodium, this is something to be aware of because the amount will increase when meat is processed or frozen, because often if you look at frozen chicken breasts, they have a glaze to help protect the meat from freezer burn. And chances are if you drink smoothies, you use some sort of powdered product. So here you can see on the left is a plant-based So you have the pea protein, the rice protein, and the chia seed. So for 2 scoops of this particular product, you would have 21 grams of protein, or 3 portions. And the proteins are complemented to try and make it a complete protein. Whereas on the right, this is a whey protein product. And your whey comes from curds and whey. So it's already a complete protein because it came from an animal. 1 scoop has 30 grams of protein, so that's about 4 portions. So meat alternatives. I hear 2 different stories from vegetarians, some saying they like to be reminded of the texture, and others saying if they wanted meat texture, they just eat meat. And as you can see, these are made with 2 different types of plant. Soy on the left and pea on the right. So the question is, how much soy, and is soy harmful? We believe that it is best to get your soy from Whole Foods whenever possible. So edamame or tofu. The jury's out on how much, but it is very easy to overconsume soy if you're eating a lot of supplement form. So just keep that in mind. I think some people were hoping these would be lower in fat, but the whole idea is to give it the same mouthfeel as meat. So you can see the Impossible Burger on the left will have around 14 grams of fat, whereas the Beyond Meat Burger will have 18. And you just have to decide, these are different forms of fat than what would normally be in meat. So it's just really a personal decision based on your goals. So the age-old question, how much do you need? Sometimes this is really hard to define because it is very individualized. However, we do recognize that past information has often been based on someone's agenda and funding. So the question is, was there bias? Now, several years ago, there was a study that focused on older adults, and they found that when they started losing muscle mass at 40 due to decreased testosterone and growth hormone, that actually we do need more protein. But it is important to note, it is more effective to combine protein intake with tolerated resistance exercise to help build the muscle when you have basically your building blocks. So for most people, 2 to 3 pounds of meat per day would be fairly typical. And it does vary if you're overweight. So obviously somebody twice the size of a smaller person will need more protein. However, you would hope that the palms of the hand as a really rough guide would compensate. Somebody underweight may not need as much, or if you have medical conditions that may increase your need. Or something like late-stage chronic kidney disease, basically the amount of protein is limited. However, there is some research to suggest that substituting the plant or the animal protein with plant protein is beneficial. Keep in mind, protein is essential. It's part of skin, hair, nails, hormones, enzymes, antibodies, so it's everywhere in our body. So here is your protein to-do list. Name 2 types of protein. Do you eat mainly animal or plant? If you eat mainly plant, do you eat at least 2 different types during a typical day to complement? If you eat animal protein, how many cooked palms do you eat in a day? Now, typically, we recommend 2 to 3 palms of the hand, but do you have special needs or goals that may change that?